So we are going to give you the backstory on John's flying adventure this past weekend.
And this was in Blakesburg, Iowa. And I was getting ready and to head out the door, and Annette threw a challenge to me. So can you tell them about that challenge and why?
Well, I asked John to seek out the women in aviation at this event. And the reason I asked him to do that was, John's mom was an aviator. She was a pilot, as was his father. And it always intrigued me that she did that for herself and for her family. And I know the reasons why she did that. And I just wanted him to kind of explore the reasons why other women in aviation have made this choice.
Well, plus, a lot of times when we go to events, you're speaking to a lot of the women and trying to find out what kind of story they have. And this time, you weren't able to go to this event.
Right.
And so you wanted to hear those stories. And so I set off to try to do that. And it was really pretty amazing because the percent of people that are women that are pilots was much smaller in this crowd of group of people that are antique aviators. And but that wasn't what was really interesting, not the fact that they were a woman, but the fact that they had such diverse type of backgrounds.
Right.
I mean, we had people who got divorced because they were going to go ahead and follow aviation and their husband wasn't going to hold them back, or they got married because they wanted to be more a part of aviation, or became engineers, or owners of family businesses, or even engineers, or pilots in the United States Air Force. So these stories are really interesting. So when you watch this video, be sure that you watch it all the way through, because every one of these stories is really interesting. In the beginning, there's a little bit of a problem with the audio because the wind's blowing on it, but after that, the audio cleans up. But to go back to my mom, my brother, Mark, and I rode in the back of a Cessna 150 while my mom was getting her pilot's license. So my earliest memories of aviation certainly are connected to my mom, who was a female aviator.
Right.
So.
And every one of these stories is as captivating as the next. You did a really excellent job seeking out these.
No, they did a great job of telling their story, which is what makes the video interesting. They were really amazing, every one of them. So
Agreed.
I hope you enjoy the video. Like if you like it, share, subscribe so that you can get more content like this. And we're just brand new at doing this,
right.
Annette and I. So please give us a shout out if you enjoy it in the comments below.
Right. And please watch every one of these interviews. They're great.
That's it. I'm John Bybee, and this is Dragger Tales, and I am here at Blakesburg for their antique aircraft fly-in. And when I left, my wife asked me what the theme of this video was going to be, and I said, well, I don't know, I'll figure it out when I get there. But she said, no, make it about women aviators. Okay, I'm sitting here talking to Mary Kate, and I walked up and I saw this really beautiful straight tail 180, and just had to find out the story about it. And so we're going to hear about how Mary Kate and this airplane came together. So, right.
Okay, so I'm Mary Kate Bayer, and this is my husband over here, Peter. And I married him for this airplane.
Well, I've got to hear that story.
Well, actually, to be precise, I negotiated the purchase of my Cessna 140 the night before the wedding, so I could say I didn't marry him for the airplane, but I did.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, I had learned to fly. I was a pilot. I wasn't flying around with people. I didn't have anybody to fly with, so I was just going in circles by myself. And this group of guys that had raised their kids and been flying for 40 years together, 30 or 40, said, hey, why don't you come fly with us on Sunday mornings, part of the Sunday Morning Breakfast Club in the Chicagoland area. We go to Wisconsin, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Illinois, and have breakfast, and then go back for a second stop, and go someplace else and have pie and coffee and pretty much waste the whole day. Oh, excuse me, not waste. We're flying. Anyway, put you in a good mood. So I started flying with these guys, and this was in the winter. And all of a sudden, one day when I went out to the rental plane to make it start, it didn't. So they all left without me. And I hung out at the local FBO waiting for them to come back for the second stop, right? I knew they'd come back, check on me and what was going on. So I went into the little FBO and there was a guy there, Bob Bushby. And I spent the morning talking to Bob Bushby.
Ah, from Bushby Mustang?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
But I didn't know all that.
Oh,
I just
see.
knew him as Bob Bushby.
Okay.
And he was an old timer, told me all these great things, included me in all the discussions with everybody else that was hanging on his word. And then these guys all came back to say, what happened to you? What's wrong with the rental plane? And at that same time also, they were trying to help me buy an airplane. So they were getting me in every kind of airplane there was. And that day, it happened that this guy named Ron, it was his turn. His wife didn't come with him. And so they said, go with Ron in a Bushby Mustang.
Oh, nice.
So here I had never heard of this dude, Bushby. I spent the morning talking to him and then got to ride in a Bushby Mustang. Isn't that amazing?
And what did you think of that plane?
It was squirrely as anything. It was my first tail dragger. I was a Cherokee pilot. And I thought I was going to take out all the runway lights. And Ron said, stop, you've got to keep doing it. You're not going to learn otherwise. Exactly. And I said, but I'm going to wreck your plane because, runway lights and Bushby Mustang wings are pretty low. I was sure I was going to take it out. And he said, don't worry about it. You have to learn sometime. So he let me taxi, he let me, take off. I'm sure he was helping. And I flew it. And he taught me when you come in for a landing, you have to stay on 80, is it? And keep it. No messing around. Stay on 80, you'll be fine. And I think he took the final landing. But then it was after we had pie and coffee, Ron said, I don't have time to take you back to your airport. So why don't you go try this other plane, a Cessna 180, with this guy?
Oh.
So now they're pushing me together with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back with him to my airport and he dropped me off. And he, in my logbook, it says that I got to ride a Bushby Mustang, I got to ride in a Cessna 180, cream and maroon, over 200 horsepower, controllable pitch prop, and all these other specifics with a guy named Phil. I don't know if I introduced you earlier, but this is Peter.
That's correct,
Yes.
Yes.
So I had all the specs of the airplane,
Okay.
but the wrong name of the person.
Oh.
And this is written permanently in my logbook.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then later,
Got it.
so it was very important, the airplane, obviously. So then, a month or so later, it was time for Sun and Fun, and they were all heading down there, and I called one of the guys and said, I want to go. I don't want to work while your guys are all playing. And they said, well, Peter will probably have room in his airplane for you. I went, okay, cool. And then we got in contact with Peter, and I went to call him and found out Peter was Phil. I didn't realize.
Okay.
Are you feeling really good, dear, at this point? Yeah. Anyway, 6 months later, we got married at Lewis Lockport Airport. I did negotiate the purchase of my Cessna 140 the night before, so I could say I had my own plane before I married him.
I got it.
But I hadn't brought it home yet, so I used the Cherokee 140 I learned to fly in. And all his friends, the Sunday Morning Breakfast Club, they flew around, and I was up there with my dad in the Cherokee. And they all came, landed, put their planes out in nice little rows, and then called me in, and Dad and I flew down the aisle and landed.
Oh no.
In front of everybody.
That's excellent.
And I wore a white pantsuit with beading on it, and the guys put out a red carpet for me, so I'd be nice. And they had detailed the plane like crazy, so I wouldn't get my white pantsuit dirty. And it was very, very windy that day, and I said, "Oh, I can't do this. I've got too much going on. I got too much." And the owner of the plane said, "You will regret this forever if you don't do it. And the line boys cleaned the plane for you. You must do it." So I did it. It was fine. And we got married. Peter made me a frame, a high wing airplane frame, and I put 3 cakes on the top, and I put 3 cakes too deep on the fuselage, and I detailed the airplane cream and maroon. And every male remembers their tail numbers of every airplane they've ever known, ever had, all the way back to even if they've had 40 of them, they remember their tail numbers. So the tail number of the airplane cake was N296. Guess what? He remembers our anniversary. November 2, 96. I know, but we remember.
That is awesome.
Right?
That is awesome.
Mounted it on blue tablecloth. We had, cotton on it like clouds. We had rainbows, circular rainbows, which are called glories, all over as the decoration. I had seen those when we were down in Florida. You look down on the clouds below you, and you see the light reflecting from your airplane, and your obsession, the airplane is in the middle of a beautiful circular rainbow. So that was our theme, was all rainbows.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
So did I say where we were at right now? What is the location of this event?
We're in Blakesburg, Iowa. It's near Ottumwa, which is where Radar Riley was.
Okay.
From MASH.
And MASH, yeah.
Knee high,
and,
orange.
We're just sitting under the wing watching a bunch of aircrafts go by, and so thank you so much for the wonderful interview. And I wasn't crazy stories, but I had no idea when I walked up that there would be this much fun in a story of aviation. But I think what this has done, it's given me the theme for what I'm going to ask other aviators, and we're going to see if they can top your story. And I don't think they can, but we're going to try.
Well, and then the other part is our honeymoon. We flew this airplane north of the Arctic Circle.
We went to Alaska.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Honeymoon.
Okay.
All right.
So top that, huh?
So top that, folks. We're going to see what kinds of stories that we can come up with. Hey, thank you so much.
Sure.
Really appreciate it.
Nice meeting you.
You too. We're going to find out from CJ what her most memorable or most interesting aviation story is, and we're going to have airplanes taking off in the background as we go. And so I'm going to just turn it over to CJ.
Well, thank you. I'm CJ. We're here at Antique Airfield, and this is actually only my second year here. I'm with my boyfriend in his 1946 Luscombe, but I got into aviation when I was 15 through my dad, flying Cessnas and doing that whole thing.
Okay.
But I knew I wanted to be a professional pilot.
Okay.
So when I was 17, that's a pretty one, I joined the Air Force.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Okay.
so
And so you're an Air Force pilot?
I'm an Air Force pilot.
Okay, well, what do you fly?
I fly a C-17.
Oh, that is amazing.
So I like big planes.
That's cool. That's
Yep.
cool. All right. Well, my son is also going to be a pilot.
Oh,
Yeah, he's got a slot, so he's going to go in February.
I'm only a little Air Force biased, so
Oh.
that's the way to go.
Well, I was in the Air Force also, and so go ahead. Tell us about your story.
I have a lot of stories.
Well, pick one.
I'd say my most memorable, not to sound cliche, but I got to be a part of the Kabul pullout. So
Okay, I don't know what that is. Oh, I do know what that is. Okay, now I understand. So tell us about that.
So that was actually one of my first missions as like a full Air Force
Full-on
commander.
pilot.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was a command pilot for that, and it was just, baptism by fire. They just threw us in and said, figure it out. So that was probably like my most memorable moment in aviation, and having to kind of pave my own way with a crew and problem solve and be, a big girl about it.
About the whole thing. Well, okay, so you got your private pilot's license, and what were the steps that it took for you to get to be an Air Force pilot?
So private pilot's license is really what they were looking for initially.
Okay.
I did have to pack parachutes for the Air Force for about 4 years while I finished my college degree. And then I just went and I basically stood on my commander's desk and said, I want to fly this big plane. This is mine.
Okay. And then that all kind of came together. So they sent you off then to pilot training school?
Pilot training. And
where'd you do your pilot training at?
Oklahoma, Vance Air Force Base.
Okay, and then where did you go for your C-17 training?
That's down in Altus, Oklahoma.
Okay.
So also in the middle of nowhere.
And then are you full-time active, or are you in the Guard, or?
I am Air Force Reserve.
Air Force
and then
Reserve,
I fly for Delta, the other side of my life.
What plane do you fly for Delta?
The 757 and 767.
Wow, that's a crazy career.
These small planes, I come back here and they kick my butt. I'm trying to get better at it.
So are you flying the Luscombe, which is a hard plane to
Yeah,
fly?
I do fly it with him.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks so much for taking a moment to speak with us. And like I was telling you earlier, my wife threw down the gauntlet to seek out more female aviation pilots. So this is great. Thank you for the interview.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. And we've run into Sharon Tinkler, and she's going to tell us about her wonderful aviation memories and hopefully great stories. And I've not heard any of them yet, right?
Right.
So here we go. Let's try it.
Good to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm Sharon Tinkler. I'm from Maryland originally, living in Tennessee now. I started flying when I was about late 40s, like 49. Got my ticket when I was 50. So I guess I've been flying almost 30 years. And I've loved every minute. It changed my whole life. You can't imagine the self-confidence it gives you in that first solo.
Oh yeah. So
a 17-year-old can just say, sure, yeah, I can do this. But a 50-year-old is really looking down the barrel a little bit.
Well, for
and
sure. And
talking to yourself, and
And I can totally relate to that. Can you tell us what is your most memorable or most interesting story that we can tell our viewers about aviation that you've experienced?
I think the best thing, the thing that I loved the most, was when my then friend, later became husband, he didn't teach me to fly, but he said, let's take a cross country. And what he meant by that was we were going to fly from Annapolis, Maryland, here to Blakesburg, move on to Hill City, Kansas, hang a left, go down to Texas, I think, to follow I-10 over into Arizona. We were exhausted. When you fly that far in a little stick and rudder airplane like a Luscombe, it's exhausting, and it was summertime, and it was turbulent and everything else, but it all worked out. He said he was going to trade legs with me, and he lied about that. I flew the whole thing, so I got credit for the whole time.
That's great.
We came home and rested, went back to Williams Gateway Airport, where we were attending an antique airplane thing, and flew back across Texas. Gosh, that took a year. And bound down by the Gulf, and then came up the East Coast back to Maryland, so we made a full circle. It wasn't a fly the rim is what they refer to it when you fly the rim of the United States, but we flew a pretty darn big rim. Anyway, and the lessons you learn, you don't get very far in a Luscombe before you got to put it down for more gas. So you're flying these not long legs, they're short legs, and you get a lot of landings, and you get a lot of people talking to you. And if you do it in something like a Luscombe or a Taylor craft, you have people coming up to you, and you're making friends you don't deserve. It's all about the airplane.
Yeah. And so let me ask you, you said you got your pilot's license when you were 50.
Yes.
So at the age of 50, you're telling your friends that you're going to get a pilot's license. What kind of reaction did you get?
Oh, you can't do that. You can't do that.
Yeah. So
I had a childhood history of racing sailboats.
Oh, okay. So
it's the same thing as flying.
You've had that adventure spirit your whole life then?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was very similar, but yeah, I had a lot of doubts. I didn't think I could do it, but I put one step in front of the other, thinking I'll find out why I can't do it.
And you got it done.
And I got it done.
That's
of course.
amazing.
Yeah.
That is a great story. Starting your aviation career at 50. That's fantastic. All right.
It's been a ride. And that was done in a Cherokee, which is a nose wheel airplane, and I think I collected about, I don't know, 700 and some hours in that.
Mm-hmm.
Flying it up and down the East Coast and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I had an unsupportive husband who famously said, "It's me or the airplane."
And
guess what?
you got the airplane.
Yeah.
That's great. I had an interview earlier where the lady told me, and it's on the video, that she married the airplane in order to get the husband.
Oh, it was the other way around. It was the other way.
Okay, well, hey, thank you so much. This was a really fun interview.
You're welcome.
Yep. So Brianna, tell us your amazing aviation story.
Yeah, so I am 21 years old. I'm a fourth generation pilot. My dad, grandpa, and great grandpa all flew. We all have spent a ton of time here at Blakesburg. I just got my instrument rating. I have just about 250 hours, so we're getting ready for commercial rating. I happen to be an aircraft owner, antique aircraft owner. In 2018, I had a really cool opportunity. I met a guy named Josh Trail here, and he was flying a really cool Champ. And I met him at the fuel barrel over there, and I was like, hey, can I go for a ride? And somehow he put me in the front seat of the Champ. And then turns out he was about 40 minutes away from us. And so I lived around this Champ. I was in it every opportunity I could have. And then a few years ago, he was like, okay, Brianna, I'm gonna sell my airplane.
And that's your plane that you have now?
Yeah.
So
then 3 years later, I flew the same aircraft into this airfield under my ownership. I still have it. Unfortunately, it is taken apart. I did not crash, which is what all my non-aviation friends think when I tell them I took my airplane apart. Unfortunately, it was covered in 1975 with Irish linen.
And now are you recovering it?
Yeah.
And what are you going to use to recover it?
I'm going to use polyfiber.
Okay.
Yeah.
The polyfiber system. Yeah, that's interesting. So you flew in today with what?
I did not fly in. I drove in my 2017 Chevy Cruze.
But you flew in last year.
I did, yeah.
Okay. And what plane did you fly in last year?
My Champ.
And I thought I overheard you saying something about an award.
In 2019.
Oh, 19.
In 2019, I won the youngest pilot award at 17 years old and a chief.
Okay. And now, you also told me that you wanted to stand in front of this aircraft. So can you tell me why you wanted to stand in front of this aircraft? Because I haven't heard this story yet.
You haven't heard? Okay. There's not much to the story. My great-grandpa built this airplane for himself. Actually, after he had lost his medical, he just kept flying airplanes. He had sold his airplanes. So he decided to build this one. Okay. And then he just flew this after he didn't have a medical and just flew whenever he wanted. There's actually a little piece of Velcro in there because he had diabetes, so he had a little candy dish Velcroed in there in case of emergency. And then he could never get the weight and balance quite right, so he donated to our museum here.
Okay. One last question.
Okay.
Into the future, what is your aviation goals?
You could ask me this question today and then 7 days from now, and I'd probably give you a different answer. As of today, I'm really interested in aerial firefighting.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah. And what kind of plane would you fly for that? Because there are many different types. There are fixed wings. There are a wide variety. So you haven't made that decision yet?
I'm really intrigued by Super Scoopers, the great big ones, and they're really super cool, but that's years and thousands of hours down the road. So I don't know. There's a company in Minnesota, and they fly air tractors for aerial firefighting, and I think that might be a good place to start.
A good segue.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that happens for you.
Hopefully.
I'm excited about that, and it's exciting to see young people being so involved in aviation, and I'm really glad that you agreed to do this interview.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Tell us about your amazing aviation career that we're just now learning about.
So I just started. I just got my pilot's license a couple weekends ago. So I'm pretty new to everything. I haven't really made a career yet. I'm just kind of starting out.
Oh, well, okay. So you mentioned career. Do you have an interest in a career in aviation? Is that what you're going to do?
I do, kind of. I'm in music school right now for music education. So it's my goal to be a high school orchestra director. But a lot of starting teachers have a summer job. So I was thinking I could do some aviation gigs over the summer.
Oh, and that works great. I am an educator. I work at a community college, and during the summer I actually went and got my pilot's license. So yeah, that idea of being a teacher and being an aviator, that sometimes works really nicely in terms of maybe teaching people how to fly, that kind of thing. And so tell us, what kind of plane did you get your license in?
I learned in a Cessna 182, so I have my high performance rating.
Oh, good. So you got that knocked off at the same time?
Before I actually got my license, I had to have that to be able to solo, so I had my high performance rating as a student pilot.
Okay, that's interesting, isn't it?
Kind of a flex.
That is cool. That is cool. So what's your next goal as far as what you're going to do now that you've achieved this? What are your sights on now?
Well, I was kind of thinking of getting my tail wheel endorsement. I know a tail wheel pilot that was kind of pushing me towards that, so that might be next summer's project.
Right. That'll really let you get some experience with your feet as you go along. So, is there anything else you want to tell us about your interest in aviation, or maybe let me rephrase that for everybody. What kindled your interest in aviation?
My dad, for sure. He's a private pilot, and he owns the Cessna that I learned in. And so I was like, well, he has another job, he owns a store. So I was like, I could pursue music and still become a pilot and have that as a hobby. So that's just kind of what started everything.
That's great. That family influence is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's good. Thank you. Okay. We're here with Elena, and she's going to tell us, like everybody else, her story, which I've not heard yet, which you get to hear for the very first time, about her amazing aviation experience.
So my grandpa was a crop duster, and he had a heart attack, and he didn't have his medical anymore. So after that, he was a mechanical engineer, so he just decided to design his own airplane. And back then, you could do a two-place ultralight trainer. So he just drew it out on the hangar floor in soapstone, and my dad welded it together. And so just on nights and weekends in our family, hangar, we just built an airplane.
Just built an airplane?
Just built an airplane, because Grandpa was like that. My dad and my grandpa were like that.
You wake up in the morning and you're like, hey, I'm going to build a plane.
I mean, I was 5 years old, and they're like, here's a piece of sandpaper, start polishing. That's you wanted to spend time with Dad and Grandpa, you grabbed a wrench, you grabbed sandpaper, you started working on a plane.
Right.
So anyway, that's how I grew up. And then Grandpa did VW engines on his planes, and a direct drive VW engine can only swing a 62-inch propeller due to tip speed restrictions. And so he developed a prop speed reduction unit, which allowed him to swing something like a 96-inch propeller.
Right, so we're just going to build a plane. Just go ahead and just randomly build a reduction system?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And he's retired, at this point, a retired farmer. So anyway, then they had a special propeller made for that. Whenever they called to order another propeller, the company had went out of business.
Okay.
And so at that point, Dad and Grandpa just said, hey, would you take this much money, for that's what we have. It's not enough, but and they said, sure. So they trucked the whole propeller company down from Pennsylvania. So after they brought down everything, they taught us how to make props, and then I graduated high school, started working at the prop shop.
Wait,
and
so what's the name of the props?
Culver Props.
Culver Props.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're the Culver Prop person I've seen on the internet.
That's me.
All right, that's great.
So Grandpa and Dad laid a very good aviation foundation for me. And so I'm working on my private pilot. I'm a student pilot now. I'm working on my solo cross countries is my next thing.
Okay.
And so
all
then
while
I can.
You're running this company.
Oh yeah, and a family, 2 kids, 2 girls that are also into aviation. So I'm growing the next generation. Excited about that. So it's good.
like aviation superhero trying to do all of these things all at one time. That's great. And so your future goal is to be involved in commercial aviation into the future?
No, actually, if I did anything more than my private and just spread the love of aviation with others through my EAA chapter, then I would probably go for CFI if I was gonna, and down the road, I may not be able to make props forever. And if I can't, then I think CFI would maybe be, my instructor says I need to, but I'm trying to decide if I'm worthy of that. Okay. It's a big responsibility.
Absolutely.
I want to do aviation justice, of course.
Well, that was a great interview. We had a battery die a couple times, so we'll stitch all of this together at the end. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was great. Alyssa, so we're going to have you tell us about some kind of amazing aviation story that you might have.
All right, so I'm Alyssa, and I'd have to say that this weekend is kind of a big thing for me. Little backstory, I am a hairstylist, and I did hair for 15 years. In 2017, I fell in love with flying and started just really enjoying going to fly-ins and enjoying these outings. So fast forward, I ended up getting my commercial pilot's license, just getting hired to fly a Lear 45 to fly commercially, or for a corporate gig. And I just acquired a Cessna 120 tail dragger.
And that's the plane you just flew in, right?
Correct, yes.
Oh, no, we have planes.
Yes, we have planes, yes. So we're here at Blakesburg at the Antique Aircraft Association Airfield, and we are here to fly our antique airplanes. And I have a 1947 Cessna 120. It was a big thing for me to be able to buy my own plane,
right?
And this career has really afforded me that. So now I'm switching from hairstylist to jet pilot, and
so I'm gonna take you back just for a second. You said that you had an interest in aviation. What was that spark that made you interested in aviation? And specifically, like, I want to be an aviator, but I also want to be a commercial aviator. What was that?
So aviation came from actually helicopters and doing a tour of Lake of the Ozarks. I had never seen that perspective before, and so I thought the lake was just a circle, kind of a dumb blonde thing, but yeah, it happened. And so I just fell in love with it, but I put it on my bucket list. And then, fast forward, I didn't really have enough money to fly helicopters, and that wasn't accessible. I had a family friend that was flying a Cessna 150 and working on his commercial pilot's license, took me to lunch. We flew around, we enjoyed the day, it was great. And this is it.
This is it.
This is it.
And so, sometimes that's just all it takes.
So that was a Friday. I started lessons at the airport I didn't know existed in my hometown. On Monday, did 3 lessons a week until about 6 months later I had my private. And I never anticipated on flying for a living until 2021, 22-ish, when someone approached me, followed me on Instagram, and was really excited to meet me, and he gave me an opportunity to fly a Caravan.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So really, I think the big takeaway from this interview is that if you have an interest in aviation, just go out and do it.
Do it.
And just make it happen.
Yeah.
Hairstylist to commercial pilot.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
That's great. Great interview.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And Cheyenne, I don't even know your last name because this is supposed to be kind of more of a spontaneous interview process. So why don't you tell our viewers your name and your amazing aviation story?
Sure. So my name is Cheyenne Matthews. I'm 27 years old and I live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I got interested in aviation actually on accident. When I went to school in St. Augustine, Florida, I had signed up for a cosmetology course, and they accidentally put me in aerospace technology.
Oh.
So I spent the first week of school trying to get out of aerospace technology and get into cosmetology, and they told me that there was no other options for electives. So I said, what the heck, I'll give it a try. And I stayed in that program all 4 years of high school. I dual enrolled with Embry-Riddle, and I got my private pilot's license when I was 17. And then I went to school to Embry-Riddle to be an airline pilot, got my instrument rating there. and ended up going to Rockwell Collins, now Collins Aerospace in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I run a research and development group. I'm an engineering manager for avionics, and I got my Cessna 150 during the COVID pandemic. Got my commercial pilot's license and my flight instructor's license in 2021 and 2022, and now I'm a flight instructor.
And just for the camera, for the people out there, tell them how old you are, that you got all of that done in that period of time.
Yeah, so I'm 27 years old. So,
and
I look even younger.
She just hopped out of the plane and agreed to do this interview. So hats off to you for doing that and just jumping right in and making that happen. Let's see, the other thing I was going to say, you work for Rockwell Collins up there, and do you also work with OPL at all?
I do work with OPL, yes.
Okay,
Tom Schnell and I.
I was just over there last weekend shooting a video for their pancake breakfast.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of work with OPL. My group, especially being a research and development group, we try and take things to flight test as early as possible. So working with OPL is really beneficial for us. So sometimes they can get things through quicker and cheaper than us as a larger corporation.
Okay, so at 27, where do you see yourself at 37 with your aviation career and working with Rockwell Collins? And what's going to happen in 10 years? What's the career development?
Hoping to move up in engineering, possibly strengthening that technical background and experience and leading my team forward. I'm hoping to continue with research and development. I'd like to get my CFII, my ATP, and hopefully a bigger airplane.
Well, I'm sure all this is going to happen for you because everything that you've done and everything that you've gone after, you've made happen. That's fantastic. And at 27.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for agreeing to do the interview.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
So we're here today at the Blakesburg Fly-In, and I'm with my youngest student, Sienna. She started her flight training when she was 11, and she's 12 years old. Now, we all know that I was the youngest pilot in 2022, and Sienna wants to become the youngest pilot so she can dethrone me. So in order to get her up there, we flew her in today, and I made her fly the entire time. So Sienna, how did you like the flight today?
I liked it.
Did you fly straight and level?
Not the whole time, no.
Did your instructor yell at you too much?
Yeah.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how good was the landing?
You did most of it, so I would say a 3. No,
she means 10 out of 10. So we look forward to Sienna flying in as PIC in 4-5 years when she's 17 and she gets her private pilot's license. She's already on her way. She has more than 10 hours, so I think she's going to make it in time.
Yeah.